Welcome to Goldbug's Engagement Index, where we talk about everything internal and external comms. So this episode is about humour in comms.
Our specialist chosen subject.
Well, I was going to say this. You are, to me, you're a very funny man.
Thank you.
Do you think everyone thinks they're funny?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think everyone thinks they're funny in the same way that I don't think everyone thinks they're creative. You meet some people and they say, "Oh, I'm just not creative," but everyone can be creative, right? And everyone can be funny. Are some people intentionally funny, good at quips and jokes and wit? And no, not everyone. I think there are a lot of people who think they are funny who aren't, which is more problematic.
I think our challenge for this particular episode is to try to not laugh at each other at all.
Oh, all the way through
So
this
it can just
episode.
be as straight as possible.
Yeah, I'm probably going to crack straight away because you just
Anyway,
like this is like saying don't eat the snack and then leaving the room.
Yeah, right. So the reason we're talking about humour is in the report that we've just done is a really interesting finding, and that is that humour doesn't really feature at all in any of the most engaging moments from our analysis. So it's not in one of the top 10 moments
Correct.
at all.
Correct.
And actually, out of the 16 different feelings that we tested these moments against, amusement is way low down. I mean, it's actually below fear.
Yeah. So you'll have more engaging comms if you instill a bit of fear than if you try to make people laugh.
Yeah, humour is such a difficult subject, right? It's highly subjective. So are brands right using humour in their comms?
A lot of the time, no, it's not a natural go-to, but it can work, and it can have some impact depending on the subject, depending on the context, the tone. So much of what makes something funny is context, right? And you hear someone like Ricky Gervais talk about this a lot, right? In terms of context is everything, right? You say something that some people find very, very funny and others find very offensive, but it's the context of where and when it was said and what the intention was. Obviously, a hugely important part of humour is timing, and often that is pre-planned in terms of the way that a comedian has timed the point at which they're going to drop a particular line. But also, I think in the context of communications, it's about, is this the right time to be trying to be lighthearted about something, or and also trying to be funny, right? It's very much in the same kind of category as we being briefed to make a viral video. That's not how it works. You make a piece of video content, and if it catches the imagination, it might go viral. But you don't really know. There's no mathematical equation per se for that. And I think with humour, it's very similar. You've got to just be careful about what the context is.
Yeah, I get really put off actually. If I see a brand that I like, let's say, and I see them trying to be funny, and I don't find it funny, that is really off-putting as a consumer.
But that's not to say that in the right context it can't work. We've experienced that. We did a campaign for one of our clients that used a comedian at the heart of it, and it was to communicate what was quite a dry and potentially quite finger-wagging subject. And by kind of putting a bit of a comedic spin on that, it took the sting out of that, and that really did grab eyeballs and engage people, and it was shared and reshared because something that would normally be just either really dull or quite patronizing, because it was communicating things that most people would say, well, I don't need to be told about that, it's obvious, but the numbers said that wasn't the case. So we needed to find a way to kind of get over that hurdle of something that was potentially quite dry and as I say, finger wagging, and the humour did it in that case, but it wasn't standing up and telling jokes about the subject. It was using wit and charm to get that across.
Yeah, traditionally it's one of the hardest things they say if you're a critic. Let's say if you're a TV critic, film critic, whatever. One of the hardest things to critique is comedy.
Yeah.
Because it is so highly subjective.
Exactly.
And I was thinking recently, I'm old enough to remember when The Office, with Ricky Gervais first came out. I remember people not being able to watch that because they're too embarrassed.
Yeah.
It's just cringe. I cannot watch it because, maybe it was just playing back their work life.
Yeah.
Or, they just couldn't see him getting into another sticky situation.
Yeah. Well, and I was probably one of those people. What I struggled with that was no one's that bad. Surely no one's that, although arguably over the years,
you've met
people have proved that that's the case. Whereas again, we're going back into the archives, but if I think about something like Blackadder, I love those because he's so acerbic and sarcastic and there's a lot of great wordplay and that's the stuff that appeals to me.
Yeah. I was also thinking, like, back in the 80s, there were some really funny adverts, right? Adverts were funny, and people would talk about adverts, right? I remember going to school and going, "Have you seen the new Carling Black Label advert?" Or something like that, right? Yeah. So, do you think that it's too risky for brands to use humour? Are they worried about being cancelled?
I think there's probably a lot of that. I think in a world where there's so much more focus on measurement and metrics and performance across multi-channels, not just get a great ad on TV, because that's the one place people will mostly see your brand. That perhaps there's a bit of over-analysis that stops that, but equally maybe that's just people and brands looking at these situations in the way that we've just been talking about. It's really subjective. It's really hard to get right. So is it too risky? Although having said that, topically, the new Andrex ad that's just come out is I saw that recently, and that really made me laugh. And it made I saw it with the kids, and they really laughed.
Yeah.
And it's based on an insight. It's based on a proper insight, and it's doing something that you probably wouldn't expect to see in a TV ad.
Yeah.
But it's been executed in a way that is amusing.
Some of the moments, right, in the report that have been voted, say, the funniest, are actually created by brands. You've got Domino's are in there.
Yeah.
IKEA, there's a video where their employees sort of do a renaissance of the Harlem Shake. That's deemed to be funny. And Severance, the Apple TV show, did a funny stunt at Grand Central Station in New York. That was deemed to be funny. Yet none of them were deemed to be engaging.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been a really interesting finding for us, right? And when you contrast that with the things that did really resonate with people, which happiness, hope, love, it's a surprise. I think it was a surprise to us that funny was not higher up in the scale, and in fact that it was as low as it was in terms of what truly engages. The emotional triggers are really ones where there's a certain sense of sadness almost. When we talk about hope, it's the stories that we looked at were all things where you go on a little bit of a journey. What's this about? Oh no, oh, this is too sad. Oh, I can't believe it. Oh, but hold on, there's a sense of a positive outcome, or something great came out of that story, and that makes people feel more hopeful.
How many times have you been sort of briefed by someone saying, "Can you make some funny content?"
Not that many, actually. I mean, listen, what you really want from a brief is, here's our problem, can you give us a great solution?
Yeah.
And if a route that we take back to a client is that we think this one is, here's the more serious one, but we think this could really work because it's slightly more lighthearted. And I think we tend to operate more in that space, that difference between something serious and lighthearted as opposed to let's make it laugh out loud. I think where we do get a lot of success is on a small scale, where we do things like we use GIFs and memes as part of a broader campaign, and you get light and shade then. You might have a bigger, more substantial message, but you might use something that's quite, in a single image, raises a smile enough to make someone engage with it and go, oh, that one thing has told me all I need to know about. It's light relief. It's almost a kind of the snack of engagement. A lot of these things are about expressing the personality of the brand. And if you think about Currys, right, at the moment, like they've absolutely
Funny.
smashing it on the social stuff, and it's very tongue in cheek. They know they're not taking themselves seriously, and the audience are going with them on that journey. People are like, "You've done it again! Can't wait to see the next thing." It's really working because they've decided that their social, at least, personality is really not taking themselves seriously.
It's kind of like the context is so important there, right? Currys to me, using the unsaid history of how people feel about curries, and use that to its advantage.
They just get out there and go for it, and that gives it that less structured, less we must write a funny video.
And contrast with how people make, say, branded content, which is often overthought. Compared to my background in journalism, where things aren't thought about so much, not thought about in terms of how would the audience feel about this? It's more around, is this funny? We think so. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
I could think of when I was a journalist, the sort of content that would be funny would usually be at someone else's expense, rather than. But there are occasions where in my world, newspapers, it would be we're going to do something really funny, and that would be hugely subjective, and often at the editor's will. And there'd be people around the newsroom going, "This isn't funny. Why are we doing it?" And the editor would go, "It is funny. It's brilliant. We should definitely do it."
What role does humour play in the briefs that you look at and you think of, or the conversations you have about solving a brief?
Yeah, and I think you have to be really realistic about what you think that the audience would find funny, or the risks attached. I think there's a lot more thinking about how risky this would be, because I've definitely responded to some briefs with what I believe have been funny ideas, and as we kind of know, being an agency, sometimes you go through while you're going through the sign-off process, those ideas suddenly become more and more watered down until they're no longer funny, but it's too late to back out. And I think so actually in our response, often we would take that into account and think, right, okay, well, yes, this is funny, but is it going to get through? Are we going to get through the sign-off process? All the risks that people are going to feel. I just keep thinking the overthinking of like whether something's funny or not in comms world compared to my old life as a journalist. And I remember when I first joined the Sunday Mirror, it must have been about 2002. It was like the heyday of Big Brother on telly. And it was just such a weird thing, because if you put a story about Big Brother on the front page, it would literally you could sell up to an extra 100, 200,000 copies. So we had all of the tabloids going after Big Brother stories, and the Sun called themselves the official Big Brother newspaper, right? And the Daily Star called themselves the unofficial Big Brother newspaper. And our editor came in one day and he went, "We're going to call ourselves," this was at the Mirror, "we're going to call ourselves the official, unofficial Big Brother newspaper." And he was just giggling his way. Yeah. And we were like, "Yeah, that's a funny, whatever." "No, we're not." And then he was like, "No, we are. No, I'm serious." And he thought, he found this so funny. It was on the front page, the official, unofficial. We're like, it doesn't make sense. No, it's funny. People will get this. They won't.
If they work in the tabloids, because it's an in-joke.
It's an in-joke.
Exactly. So within your circle, maybe.
Yeah, and some of the things that would get through on that sort of level, just at the editor's discretion.
I think going through that process, and you're talking about how things can get watered down as you move through the process. I think partly that's because a piece of work can get in front of more eyes as it goes through stakeholder management, and the subjectivity of humour can start to have its impact. But I do think the flip side of that is it does take bravery from a client to go with something that's more, it's got comedy or humour like baked into it. We had that experience with the campaign that we did. They were really brave, but they loved it from the get-go. Right from the get-go, it was like, this is brilliant. They could see how it was going to work. They could see the reasoning behind using humour for it, and that it was going to get over the hurdles that were problematic, and bought into it right from the off. And that was it. There was no watering down of it, which is why it worked so well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really kind of important point. So it's use it sparingly, look at the context, understand the hows and whys and wherefores, and make sure that the client is going to be brave enough to actually go for it without starting to pick it apart.
Yeah, and I think a key takeout as well, it takes the pressure. I'm going to be using the results from this report, because to take the pressure off the idea that this particular campaign needs to be funny.
Yeah.
Because actually making it more emotional, we're playing on the strengths of what's in the report. And if you have a byproduct that is funny, then
great,
fine.
Yeah. Because this is the other thing as well, right? We've talked about this already, but we're not saying don't use humour.
Yeah.
Don't ever do it.
Yeah.
It's an absolute no. That's just not true, because funny things can cut through, particularly in a world of doom and gloom, and where lots of things are very serious and homogenized and all the rest of it. People do want to giggle, and it can cut through. Just know that you're doing it in service of the right outcomes.
Yeah. We're going to wrap up.
Yeah.
With this, what's your funniest joke?
Oh.
You know what? I can never think of a joke.
I can't remember jokes.
No,
I can't remember jokes. You know me. I just like to riff on a moment.
Yeah. I told a joke. This is my funniest joke, because I remember I was 5 years old at primary school. And
is this where the podcast just cuts off?
What did we say?
That is humour. Thanks for watching, listening, and we'll see you on the next one.